Delighted to be having a follow-up conversation with author and creator Doug Wagner. We're talking about the project Yumi 00EX. Doug, thank you for joining.
Oh, Jason, thanks for having me on the show.
Anytime, anytime, absolutely. For those that may be new, we have a bit of an origins kind of question. So anyone that's new to your work, anything that you'd like to say about how you got into comics, the comics industry, any of that sort of backstory that you'd like to share?
Oh yeah, at 17, I kind of decided I wanted to write comics, much to the chagrin of my mother, who's like, you need a plan B for this. But I'm too hard-headed to listen to that kind of nonsense. So I decided, this is the path I was going to go down, and spend about a good 15 years just pitching nonstop, and probably built up a good collection of probably 200 rejection letters. But none of that stuff slowed me down. I was like, this is what I knew I wanted to do. Along the way, I worked probably 20 different jobs, trying to get, at least pay the bills. And then, what, 2004 is kind of when comics really got started for me. That's when 12 Gauge Comics was created, and we started with The Ride. And that was with Image Comics. And I've pretty much been doing Image Comics nonstop since, along with, some DC and Marvel and Dynamite and, other things here and there as well. So yeah, it's just been people always ask me like, what's the secret to getting into comics? I'm like, all I can tell you is that I'm hard-headed. Like that was my secret.
It's a good secret. It is a good secret. So speaking specifically of Yumi, any particular ingredients that were part of this project for you? It's a four-issue miniseries, I know.
Yeah, Hoyt Silva came to me kind of with this idea of like, hey, what if we flip James Bond on its head? And kind of told it from the female perspective, all these, in the classic James Bond movies, all these women that he like seduces, gets them to be on his side and then disappears on them. He's like, what happens after that? And so, Hoyt and I have weird senses of humor, as you know, and it basically just dove down this road of like, man, let's make this so extreme. Like, for once, James Bond messed with somebody who's 10 times the spy he will ever be. But
Mhm.
at the same time, like we wanted to be fun, have, like a lot of cool music and try to keep it, as like relevant as we could and fun and over the top as I tend to do. So we just kind of dove into this like fun, crazy adventure thriller that we wanted to write. It's just fun action over the top nonsense.
Nice, nice. I know that you're a master of genre. You've worked in a lot of genres. What particular tropes were you kind of playing with? Maybe fun part of the story that was just a lot of fun to work on.
Well, obviously we dove head first into the whole James Bond spy, tropes, everything. And, like, well, we start out with like she takes on MI6 and basically she's just going to burn it to the ground, just trying to find out where this ex-boyfriend of hers disappeared to. She finds, this, of course, their little secret lair where like, they have all kinds of gadgets and watches, all that kind of stuff. And probably my favorite part of it is like when she steals their latest car, which is an AI run Lamborghini. And, along the
Mhm.
way, like she teaches it, like, like you've got a kind of stuffy, kind of like English voice. Let's change that to something fun. And she changes it to talk like Cardi B. And so at that point, like they become, like Laurel and Hardy, kind of like a tag team, humor duo. And they're both in their own right weapons of mass destruction. And so like you team them together and they're just like, oh yeah, they're just gonna just wipe the planet out if they have to find this guy.
So you get to also poke some fun at AI as well.
Oh yeah, yeah, of course. Like so, like what is AI and where's it going to go? And I didn't want to like necessarily do the Terminator thing, so it's more like, hey, let's have fun with the flip side of that of like, it's not perfect. It's
Mhm.
if it's programmed by humans, it's not going to be perfect. It's going to have its flaws, and we just kind of have fun with like, hey, what would that look like?
You mentioned Hoyt Silva. What was it like to work with Hoyt and then the rest of the creative team on the book?
Oh yeah, everybody on the book. I've been pretty lucky. Like a lot of the creator-owned stuff, like the teams just come together, and we all have the same kind of like, hey, we just want to do a great book. That it's never about like, oh, me or you or who's going to shine in the book. It's like, no, the book's got to sell to make all of us look good. And so Hoyt was fantastic to work with. He's a wonderful collaborator, and like, we kind of bounced everything around on every page as we were going along. Then obviously we had what Leonard's and Frank that that Kovic, which I always have a hard time saying. They were fantastic. I put Frank through it, the letterer. I mean, Leonard's was like he and Hoyt worked pretty close, so that was pretty smooth on my end of things. But Frank at the end of the day was like, man, I'm so tired of musical notes. Like, we have musical notes throughout the whole every issue. And he's like, man, this was one of the tougher things I had to figure out. So I challenged Frank to stay sane while he was doing this, but he was a trooper, man. He did, he was like, hey man, this is what I'm hired to do. This is what I'm going to do. And so everybody was great. Like everybody just kind of like did their job and you hit your normal hiccups for like somebody might be, oh, I didn't get work done this week. And you're like, hey, this is a creator owned book. We'll solicit it when we're done. There's no major deadlines like you get like in a Marvel or DC book. So yeah, I mean everything was swimmingly well.
It's nice, good when the collaboration comes together, the creator-owned spaces. I know it has its affordances. Um, as you're looking across these four issues, anything that you'd like to say about what we can expect from the story that's not been mentioned? And then, is this a world that you would want to visit again?
Yeah, I mean, talking about the fun stuff, it's just to me, each issue has its own kind of like we go from country to country, which I loved, like doing research into each country and how Yumi likes to send postcards to her dad, for each country, and we kind of work that in if you're paying attention to it. And each one of Richard's exes, that kind of runs into Yumi and has these massive battle scenes. And it's, Humi's just trying to get information out of him, but of course, it's never going to be that easy. And everything just continually escalates, without trying to give too much away. But like, the fun reveal at the end of issue 3 that kind of leads into the finale of number 4 was probably one of my favorite parts. Um, and then would I revisit this? Absolutely. Like we had so much fun doing this book and I don't normally get to write just straight up action a lot of the times. As you know, like most of my stuff's, horror and serial killers and cannibalistic furs. So like I don't get a lot to write just straight up action blowing up stuff, setting people on fire kind of stuff. And this was one of those times where I got to unleash on that. And Hoyt and I have the same opinion of that kind of stuff. We just want to go too far. And so yeah, absolutely would I revisit again.
It's nice. A few spy questions before we talk about genre for just a moment. Favorite version of Bond or any other spy that's out there?
Yeah, I mean, phew, that's a good question because I mean, I love all that stuff. So, I grew up where a time where like I actually got to meet Roger Moore on set of one of the James Bond films because they were shooting it in my hometown.
Oh,
And so
wow.
that will always have like, that was during Moonraker. And so Roger Moore will always have that like special place in my heart. But I mean, I have to say like Sean Connery is always going to be the best, in my
Right.
opinion. Like
Yes,
he was
yes.
the original, he was the best. He set the standard. And then I mean, I still love like Jason Bourne. Especially
Yeah.
the first movie is absolutely amazing. Love the Mission Impossible movies for what they are. You just got to realize like it's going to be a crazy, fun, over the top, kind of thriller in each one. And then, I think you have to throw in Jack Reacher. And both the TV show
Mhm.
and the movies were fantastic to watch. I had fun watching all of them. And it was fun to see the two different kinds of approaches to both the Jack Reachers, but like I enjoy both of them.
And meeting Roger Moore, that's got to be a
Oh
win.
yeah.
And don't forget the Saint. The Saint is also part of that story.
Oh yeah, yeah. The Saint is in there. Yeah, I forgot about that. That was another great movie. Yeah, with Val Kilmer, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Yep, that was fantastic.
Who writes and performs the song for the book? If Yumi had its own song, would that be Cardi B? Who might that be?
Because we put in, it was important to me. Like I spent probably a good 60 hours just going through independent artists, trying to find what I thought would be the right artist for each song, each place in the book. Because she loves music, but I wanted it to be eclectic. I wanted to mix in there like obviously we've got like Billie Eilish and Taylor Swift, but at the same time like, I wanted to
Mhm.
mix people that nobody had ever heard of, or maybe they're up and coming. And so that becomes a tough one because you're like, man, that could be a lot of people. I mean, obviously, if Cardi B would do it, I would love that. But getting the licenses for all that kind of stuff is, a monster when you start thinking
Yeah.
about film and TV. Um, man, I just, yeah, that's a tough one. But I would want it to be a good cat, like a good like what we did for the book. I'd want it to be a well-rounded, like different, obviously throw in, I mean, if you put Taylor Swift song in there, if you can get the rights to do that and she wants to do it, that's going to bring people to see the film. But at the same time, you've got all these, smaller people that I'd love to still have their music in the film because then maybe it'd bring them to the forefront.
Yeah, yeah. I also love what you're saying about kind of flipping the head on some of those tropes and kind of reworking that. And great to think of some up and comers that could do some good work with that as well with a theme song.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if anybody's checked out the Linda Lindas, but I bumped into them as I'm doing this like deep dive search. And it's just four females like you wouldn't ex when you see the band, you're like, wait a minute, this is a band? And then you hear them singing like they're doing like this really cool like punk rock kind of thing. And I was just like, man, that's one of those bands that I think will probably end up being big because like they're just so neat and fun. And you're gonna hear me say this word a lot with this book, eclectic. Not like I fell in love with the Linda Lindas.
Nice, nice. I have not been exposed. I'll have to correct that after we record.
I appreciate it.
Of course, of course. Now, you've written in a variety of genres. You have done horror, the serial killer thing. You've done fantasy, action, superhero, a range of things. Is there a genre that you are most at home in, or one that you'd like to try out next?
Most at home, I mean, probably right now, horror because I've just been doing so much of it lately that one feels, that feels like the comfort zone, for me. Like it's like, well, I mean, if you're gonna ask me what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go straight to horror because that's just what I've been doing for a while. The one that I have always been in love with and probably is still like my number one genre for me is science fiction. The
Mhm,
tough
mhm.
part is comics struggles with science fiction. It's just not an easy sell to like sell spaceships in space. Like kind of like, I mean, obviously you've seen some hits here and there, but it's the science fiction and comics really struggles, I think, just because it's so hard to get the grand scale of what
Mhm,
science fiction
mhm.
is on a comic book page. It's just a little tougher than say some of the other stuff.
Yeah, yeah. As a writer, you can apply this to horror or any genre that you'd like. And then we'll talk about some details about where people can find the book and such. How do you know when a story's working? How do you kind of get that feeling that this is the concept that I want to go after?
I'm not sure I'm ever sold that it's working.
Yeah.
But like as a writer or creative, like you always have your demons that go in, those doubts that are like, I'm not sure that what you're doing is going to work. I think when I figure out at least a scene's working is when it actually elicits an emotional response from me. If it can make me tear up or if it can make me like laugh, out loud, as I'm writing it, those kind of things I go, okay, now like if that can have the response from me when I know what I'm about to write and it still has, elicits emotion from me, then I go, okay, that's because that's what what it comes down to when I'm writing a story is like I'm hoping that people relate to the characters and the situations and that they have emotions, hopefully a wide range of emotions while they're reading the book. And that's my ultimate goal. And if it does it to me, then I say, okay, well, wait a minute. That hopefully will translate into at least some other people enjoying it as much as I am.
In that collaborative process, anything that Hoyt or anyone on the team has done that's been especially surprising, or any design that's really stood out to you from your scripting?
Yeah, I mean, Hoyt's an amazing artist, and I love everything he did on this because it's such a unique and the stuff that him and Kevin Leonard did, together color wise, like they just did something that I don't normally see in comics. It's like bright and colorful, and and something like I said, the mix they came up with blew me away. And some of the pages that Hoyt put together that are like some of the more montagey pages just were I was shocked at how amazing they ended up and how much fun they were for me to read. And I'd written them, so that's always a plus. And then I'll go back to Kevin, like how he worked the musical notes into the fight scenes and stuff. Just I was amazed at his expertise.
Thanks. Where can we find out more about Yumi 00EX?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the first place you want to go is Image Comics. Obviously on the Image Comics website, you can go there. and check out, obviously find out when it's coming, all those kind of things. That's the primary spot at this moment. Obviously, if you're a retailer, you go to Lunar and check it out there. And obviously, I'll be sharing stuff constantly because that's what we do in the creative world in comics anyway. So obviously, on my Facebook and Instagram page, you'll see that quite often, maybe more than you want, but that's what I do. Uh, and I mean, the big thing is like, this is one of those things where it looks like Yumi's. We've kind of got the FOC numbers and that kind of stuff already in, and sales are looking pretty good on this one. So much like Narco, I think number one could be in danger of going to a second printing pretty quickly.
Nice. Where can we find out more about you? You mentioned Facebook, Instagram, and then anything that's on the horizon that you'd like to mention.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, Daniel Hilliard and I, who have done plastic and vinyl and most of my horror series stuff, we're also going to start a new horror kind of line of books with a Clover Press, and so our Kickstarter is currently in the pre-launch phase. We haven't launched it live yet, but the next book's going to be called "I Love Apocalyptic Zombie Misfits." And it's going to go straight to
Nice.
graphic novel form. It's a long supernatural road trip, so we felt like it was important that you read it in one sitting versus it being broken up in a monthly. I know that sounds weird, but for us, we really wanted people to read it in one sitting versus having to wait a month in between issues. And so that's going to be launched soon, and you can find that on my website or Facebook or Instagram. Again, I'll be posting plenty of that stuff out there. And then we also have something kind of special that we got two things coming up. One in October for Halloween that's specifically for Halloween, I think people are going to love. And then next March, we have another book coming out as well that I think is going to be pretty unexpected.
Cool. Um, I've gotten more into horror over the past few years, so delighted that you're working in that space and delighted that we have more that's on the way. Have we missed anything that you want to make sure to include for this talk?
No, I don't think so. I think that's everything I can include at the moment.
All right. Sounds great. Well, great to chat with you a second time. Certainly glad to talk with you anytime. We can talk spy stories, horror, or anything in between. I love the range of what you create, and may the conversation continue.
Yeah, it would be my pleasure, and thank you so much for having me on the show again, Jason.